I'm Mel Jesse. I work for Alyeska Pipeline Service Company. I've been with them for be 50 years this year. It's been quite a ride, and that's what got me into obviously into the oil industry. And I know it's kind of unusual, but I was only with one company the whole time for 50 years. I originally came to Alaska on a basketball scholarship out of Northern California, Elk Grove, California, and came up and played basketball at University of Alaska Fairbanks in the early 70s, and that's what brought me up to Alaska initially. And I stuck around, and eventually, the big thing going on at the time, because I remember the late 73 and then early 74, the passage of the law, to authorize the construction of the Pipeline Authorization Act. And then all that got signed into law in the first part of 74 while I was going to UAF, and everything, Fairbanks changed dramatically after that was announced, and that was really kind of the thing everybody was talking about, and so it was inevitable that I would end up working for the pipeline. Got started with Alyeska, funny thing, but just I was recently married at the time, and my mother-in-law was working for Alyeska, and she said, "Hey, they've got an opening in Alyeska. You should go out there and apply. It's perfect for your kind of background and all that." And I said, "Okay." I went out and interviewed, and the people that interviewed me were there was a guy named Ross Thompson. I don't know if you ever knew Ross. Keith Burke. Did you know Keith? Oh, well, anyway, they interviewed me for the job, and I got it and started to work. And I started to work on December 26th, 1975. And I'll be retiring. As the calendar works, my last official payday will be December 26th, 1925, or 2025. It'll be 50 years to the day that I'll be retiring from Alyeska. It's going to be quite a transition to leave. But it's time. 50 years is long enough. I worked in Fairbanks out at Fort Wainwright, the headquarters building, building 1555 on Fort Wainwright. And I was hired as a contract compliance person. So as you can imagine, we had a lot of money being spent to build the pipeline. A lot of people out there along the pipeline, working and charging Alyeska for all kinds of things, whether it's the labor, or whether it's the welders, or the catering, security, it doesn't matter. So what we had field accountants that were out there, and we didn't have computers, so they would have manual kind of logs where they would log the location they're at, the camp that they were looking at, how many people were staying there for each company, and all that. So we had statistics that they would send in, and then we would put a table together of those statistics and use that to cross-check against what we were being billed, and then looking at, obviously making sure they're billing the right rates and overhead and all the other stuff. But a lot of money being spent, so there's no way we could guarantee 100% that it was correct, but at least we could provide some assurance that we weren't getting ripped off too much by the contractors at the time, because the things were just going so fast. Late 75, that's when they were just transitioning stuff from Bechtel over to Alyeska in managing the pipeline construction, and so there was a lot going on, and anyway, just happened to be there at a really good time. Oh man, well, when we were getting close to the startup, they moved me to acreage because they were hiring for the operating company, and I got hired on as a business analyst. So my job was to help the southern district of the pipeline kind of manage all their finances. And so, we'd help them with their budgeting, help them with their AFEs or funding requests, things like that for capital or whatever they needed to manage the region of the business I had. I also went up later and did the northern district of the pipeline. So anyway, so I started there, but I was only there for a couple of years, and then we were putting in our last two pump stations. So we had pump station 2 and the contingency unit at pump 2 also, and pump station 7. that were being constructed. The project managers of those projects, Dave Hagen was the project manager for Pump Station 7, and Bill Howitt was the project manager for Pump Station 2 and contingency unit. Interesting thing about the contingency unit was when we started up the pipeline, we had an explosion at Pump Station 8. So they had to kind of stop what was going on, and fortunately we had another pump station, Pump 6, that was not part of the initial startup kind of phase, but it was ready to go. It was constructed, it was done, and it just took a short period of time, a few months, to kind of get that station ready, checked out, and got it online, to get up to where we needed to be for continuing kind of the throughput to Valdez. But when that happened, there was a recognition that, if we had lost a station on the north end, Pump 1, 3, or 4, we couldn't have gotten the oil over Adigan. And so they said, we need to have a contingency plan. And so what they did was when we built Pump Station 2, they did it in 2 phases. One was on a skid-mounted mainline unit. That was the contingency unit. And it was actually brought in on a C-5A aircraft for the military. We had an arrangement. Ben Hilliker, do you remember Ben Hilliker? Ben Holman. Ben Holman did the logistics and worked that out, kind of worked all that stuff out. And they flew it up to Prudhoe Bay, and so we could get it down to Pump 2 without, pounding it to death or taking too long, because we wanted to get it online quick too, so because throughput was starting to really ramp up. But we had a contingency unit on skids, and then at Pump Station 1, 3, and 4, we developed a skid area with piping, configured to be able to tie into it if needed. And we had a plan that if we lost one of those stations, the plan was we'd take that contingency unit from 2 and move it to 1, 3, or 4, tie it in, get the oil up and going again. So that was part of the design of Pump Station 2, and that was brought online, I think it was early 1980. Anyway, and then the second unit came in, and then we also were building Pump 7 at the same time. And so anyway, I went to projects, and I was a cost engineer on those. And I'm happy to say, I know on Pump 7, the estimate was $60 million, and we came in like 59.8 or 59.9 million, so we right under the budget. So I was happy about that. So that's kind of where I went there, and then I came back to the operating company and brought kind of my experience of projects, and worked with the company and said, we can't manage projects the way we manage our operating costs. Our operating costs, we just do our business, and we put in accruals, and we whatever, it's pretty routine stuff. Said projects, we have to know where we are and be able to forecast and adjust based on real good numbers. I said, when we're doing it out of our operating system, it's like, and some people may not remember, but we used to use checkbooks, all right, checkbook registers. And it's like managing your personal finances off of your bank statement that you get, at the end of the month. Well, it's too late. I mean, you need to keep track of what you're committing to, so you know where you are in your finances at any time. So developed a system. It was called the Commitment Reporting System, CRS. And we had a couple people staffed in there to help pull stuff in, and we automated a lot of things like purchase orders. When we write a purchase order, we would book that cost as a commitment. Where in the financial system, you can't book it until it's received, right? So we get all that stuff loaded in. So what we're doing is we're forecasting, on less remaining. I mean, if we're 75% done and we've got our committed costs in, we may only have a smaller amount that we have to kind of forecast, a variable amount. It gets smaller and smaller as the project goes on. So it helped us manage our projects. So we brought that the way we account or track costs for a project. It's called the Construction Code of Accounts. That was one, it was based on what we'd used on Pump Station 2 and 7. Brought that in the company accepted it, adopted it, and that's all still used today, that same structure, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so and then after that, what did I do? I got brought back in to do the long-range planning, economic analyses, things like that. So do all the AFEs that we had, all the big contracts that we had, I did all the economics on it. You know, one of the things that was during the 80s to the late 80s, maybe 90 time frame. Yeah, it was late 80s actually that I stopped doing that. But some of the things that were fun at that time was DRA. We had a drag reducing agent that we would inject into the pipeline because throughput was ramping up, and the hydraulic model, I mean, we had pinch points that we just couldn't push any more oil without adding more pumps. Except if we added the DRA product, you know, we could push more oil and our volume went up. So we were testing. A guy named Werner Monk was our engineer that was in charge of that, and I worked with Werner where he would do testing of different products at different locations, and then we would sit down and look at it, and I would help him run the numbers, and kind of based on those numbers, we were in a better position to negotiate with contractors. And we had 2 contractors, and we would sort of compete, you know, go one against the other, and, you know, and help kept the market competitive a little bit, and also anyway. So the economic stuff was a lot of fun, and that was one thing I remember doing that I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed working with Werner. He's a very smart hydraulic engineer. And then after that, I went into project controls, and the reason project controls. It was a new department. Projects department and project controls were new because of, you know, we were finding corrosion on the pipeline. So we had some major, you know, corrosion projects going on. We had also had the Exxon Valdez happen. And yeah, that was a gut punch to everybody. Not something we were sort of accountable for or whatever, but it affected the industry, affected us. I mean, it was a big black eye for the industry, but we got through it. The company and the industry responded appropriately and responsibly. Yeah, there was one thing about Pump Station 7 that was funny. It was the estimate, the AFE. So those aren't familiar with the term AFE. It's authorization for expenditure, and it's done for big projects, for funding of capital expenditure kind of items. And so when we had to have an AFE and get it approved by everybody to get the funds to build Pump Station 7. Well, the estimate came in at 60 million. And the estimate was put together by a gentleman named George Haywood. Anyway, George put together the estimate because we were fast tracking this thing, right? He did a material takeoff estimate, so he'd been around during the construction, had access to all the data, and he came up with an estimate, and the AFE in the estimate section said one each pump station, $60 million, and everybody approved it. And the funny thing is that we actually came in right on target for that thing. So George knew what he was doing. No detail to support it, but everybody trusted that it was going to be accurate, and we managed to hit it. Well, initially, I was the manager of cost control. We had project control. We had the cost and we had the schedule side. I had the cost side and a bunch of cost basically engineers or cost accountants that were working that. To get all the costs in support of the project department. And did that for, a couple years. But during that time, we were ramping up our project department, and we had a lot of new employees, and we needed a training program for the project group. And I was fortunate enough, I was in the right place at the right time. They said, Mel, tag, you're it. Go to London. attend their 2-week-long project management training course. It's in an off-site facility where you stay there, you live there, you know, whatever. And it was 2 week long, and it's cultural differences here, because we'd show up and, you know, you'd be have a day of training, and then after you're done with the day, you'd go to the pub on site and you'd socialize, and then you'd go back and work. And we had breakout groups, and we would work a case study every night. We'd work on that case study for the two-week period. So as we learned certain aspects of a project, we applied that to the case study that we were working, and so they worked that as a way of learning. The other thing that was amazing about that course was they brought their subject matter experts in from around the world. The person who was the best in it might be in India, or might be in, you know, who knows, all over the world. They're coming in, and they're coming to London, and they're going out there and they're teaching that class. So you ask questions. You know, a lot of times you go to training, and the person has some knowledge who's instructing, but they don't have real depth and working knowledge. So you could ask these people questions, and they would give you real examples of, you know, of what would really explain and answer your question. It was great learning. The only thing we could do, and kind of what we did, was that we can't do that. We can't bring all their people in. But we did use the model of having our subject matter experts teach that section of the training, so that when the project people asked questions, they were there, they could answer it. So we learned some things from that, but it was kind of a fun adventure. But did that, and then they did a reorg. Alyeska does reorgs every once in a while. Somehow I managed to survive all of them through 50 years. But it came out, and they added a position in our projects and engineering division. Bill Howard was the vice president. So we had project controls, we had inspection, we had projects, and then they added this position called project administration, and that was my position. They moved me into that. And it was subtitled the gatekeeper position, because we had the Exxon Valdez, we had all these corrosion projects. We had about $1 billion worth of projects. And that's a lot of money now, but it was a whole lot of money then. So my job was to prioritize the work so that we're getting the most important stuff done first, to simplify the AFE process. So came up with different kinds of AFEs, blanket AFEs for things that were sort of commodity or end items we could buy, like vehicles, equipment. Instead of writing AFEs for everything, you know, you just bucket them, and then there's somebody accountable for managing that bucket of funds. And we did program AFEs, sort of routine things we do every year that have to be funded. We would write, you know, we would just do this program AFE annually to get really undefined work like corrosion response, like corrosion digs, right, to dig up pipe and repair it. Well, you don't know how many digs you're going to have, and you know, all that kind of stuff, where they're going to be yet. So you have a program that says you're going to do what you can, and you fund a certain amount of money to get a certain amount of that work done. So we did a lot of streamlining of our process, and that was my role in that area. And then one day, my boss, Bill Howard, came by, and he says, "Mel, you got a minute?" And he brought me in his office. He said, "Mel," he says, I need you to take on a project." I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "What do you want me to do?" He says, "We need to build a regulatory compliance process." And I said, "I don't know anything about regulatory compliance." And he goes, "Yeah, but you're good at solving problems, and you'll figure out what needs to be done. And I need you to take that on. Would you do that?" And I said, "Oh, well, absolutely, I'll do it." And so I led a task force to, you know, consultant involved, but all of our like legal and environment and all the different groups, and 2 owner company representatives were on this committee, and we developed our regulatory compliance process. And we still use that same process today. You know, the tools we use to support it are obviously a lot more sophisticated than an Excel worksheet. So that I did that, and then And then almost, I mean, like 6 months after that was done, I was asked to go lead another team, and we were doing business process reengineering. And there were 3 different teams that were formed. Operations, it was moving oil, maintenance modification, and quality. And they had me lead the quality team. So quality was training, documents, records, drawings, inspection, all quality kind of related activities that nobody else wanted to do. But anyway, so we looked at that and built new processes. We just we learned business process reengineering. There was a consultant, Booz Allen and Hamilton. They taught us all how to do business process reengineering. So we'd go into big conference room. We'd have a room full of people, and we'd just be putting stuff up on a wall. Say, here's the process. It goes from here to here to here. Then we'd start by a baseline mapping of how everybody thinks it's done today, and that is ugly, usually, because people don't understand that's really going on. And then you look at it and you say, okay, in an ideal world, how should it work? What's the simplest way it should look? How should it work? And so you'd come up with this. You get the group to agree, well, this is what it really should look like, and you'd redo it. And then you'd work the details to sort of make that happen. And it was really a great process. And anyway, did that this would have been in the, like around 95 time frame, somewhere in there, 94, 95. And then I took over all the stuff that we developed as a team. They ended up giving me to implement. So I was a department manager over, it's called Information Management Service Unit. So that was at the time we had business units, basically Fairbanks, Valdez, and Anchorage. And then we had support units that supported them all, and a service unit. And I was a service unit lead. Had about 80 people in the department at the time. But anyways, very, very interesting kind of history and all that stuff. Then there was I tend to jump around because they want to just put me somewhere else. We had these external audits that were done by, this is kind of the dark period at Alyeska, where we had whistleblowers and we weren't listening to our employees. And so they went external, and then we tried to figure out who they were. And it was called Hamelgate, the guy named Chuck Hamill that everybody was going to. Anyway, they, instead of trying to figure out why the people were concerned about safety or whatever, they wanted to find out who the people were so they could get rid of them, Not a good thing. So we had to, anyway, so we got audited. The congressional hearings happened. Our owners, our executives, everybody went in front, and then the whistleblowers went in front of Congress, the congressional hearing, like you see on TV today. And it wasn't good for Alyeska, and some of the things that were done. And so we Congress decided, we authorized you, we're going to have an audit, we're going to find out what's going on. And so they brought in an auditor from the nuclear industry. And he was from Comanche. He had worked at Comanche Peak Nuclear Power Plant. And I had actually, in this business process reengineering effort, had done benchmarking and had actually gone to Comanche Peak for just kind of for benchmarking. Plus, we'd heard that this was going on, and so learned a lot. They are definitely held to a very high standard in the nuclear industry, and so just so we were kind of aware of what was coming. But in this new role, they wanted me to work with the organization in addressing all of those findings and closing them out. They were called AAIs, audit action items. There were 4,920 of those things that had to be addressed and fixed. One subset of those included 60,000 electrical items and violations that had to be resolved and fixed. So a lot of money, a lot of people, a lot of resources to fix that stuff. But we got our way through it. And then after that, I ended up, they said they wanted me in internal audit, for doing quality audits, compliance audits, stuff like that. So I did that. And then I developed our CAPA system. It's a corrective action, preventive action. So a lot of different processes that we have as a company results in actions like an investigation to an incident, an audit, an inspection, whatever. There are commitments. The government agency issuing us, some findings or an NOV, all those require action. So they put me in charge of, and we ended up calling it the Management Action and Commitment System and Process. And so we developed a process, and then we went out and found a tool, implemented the tool, also finished that tool under budget. And it was only a month after its scheduled completion date, and that was because we were waiting for them to finish installing a server, right? But we got that system implemented to support the process, and so I stewarded that for a few years, got it going, and it where we were delinquent or not meeting our obligations. I think the first couple years we used it, I think we had one delinquency. So we were managing our commitments and getting it done because we had a tool, and it was one tool instead of everybody managing it sort of themselves in their own way. And it made it visible, which is always a good thing. But after that, I ended up in a very strange move. There was an opening in a department called the Employee Concerns, Business Practices Office and Employee Concerns Group. And as a result of the whistleblower stuff and a result of all the audit findings, Alyeska was mandated to have an employee concerns program. And there was an opening in there to do investigations and work with people. And so I went and I interviewed for that. And the new manager that was coming in, he knew working with people and he was familiar with employee concerns stuff, but he didn't know the company. And when I interviewed, I basically told him, I said, you know the process and you know the people side of things. I said, I know the business and the process side of things internally. I said, together we'd make a great team. He hired me. It was fun. Mel Williams was his name. Still is his name. Anyway, I worked with Mel until he left the company, and I actually did employee concerns for, almost 10 years. And that involved mediation between people, really looking into concerns and see if they were valid or not, and working with management to get them fixed. And then it evolved over time to really where we stopped being reactive and we started being proactive. And we started working with managers and training, because the weak point was that people weren't comfortable going to their supervision, or their supervision wasn't listening to them. So we worked on giving the supervisors, managers, the skills. And we used a model, it's called crucial conversations, where you give people the skills to be aware and to listen and to engage and and to work and to take the issues and not just push people away. And that worked really well. And I was employee concerns until one day a vice president of engineering came to me and said, Mel, we need your help in quality. We've got a new API standard that PHMSA has supported, the industry is supporting, and our president at the time, Tom Barrett, had committed to, and they're having a hard time getting it implemented. We want you to go over and take over quality and get that thing implemented. It's API 1173. It's the Pipeline Safety Management System process that they'd implemented. And and what we did was I went to quality, went back into quality stuff. We also did investigations. We did all kinds of stuff. But what we ended up developing as our API solution was just basically a formalized management system framework So he had developed management system, we call them Alyeska's management system processes, but we didn't have any overarching sort of framework. So we did a gap assessment between the requirements of API 1173, found that there was very few things we'd have to add. We built the framework, so we basically developed elements. I think there's 18 elements, 16 elements, I can't remember the number of elements in our management system. The processes support that. Our quality program requirements also feed into that. And so basically built that framework and implemented it, and the company's using that today. And it seems to be going well. There's some things they still adding to and improving, because we're always looking at continuous improvement. A lot of the stuff that's improving now is just kind of the measurement and management review process, the annual review and engagement of the higher level executive management and how things are going from a kind of process and control standpoint. And I did that until they eliminated quality in the reorg, and there were kind of two areas that I applied for that I had done before, and what was nice is both of those managers came back and they said, "Hey, Mel, which one do you want?" And I said, "I think I'd be more value to the internal audit, doing compliance audits, making sure that our controls are staying consistent and still meeting the quality program requirements and meeting the regulatory requirements." And so I've been doing that ever since then. That's been about 5 years now. And it's a nice way to kind of go out. I'm in the process now of, I officially have a retirement date now, and now I'm working with my, my team to make sure that people are, I'm dumping as much knowledge or understanding or ideas or history as I have, and as fast as I can on them. And it's like, the fire hose thing, but it's, I care about this pipeline at the end of the day. You don't go 50 years putting your heart into something, without caring about it. And I care about it. And it's, it's so important. If that pipeline's not there, if it's not the old reliable pipeline that you find oil, you put it in there and it gets to Valdez and you get it to market, if something happens with that pipeline, you've got all these investors, you've got people committing billions of dollars to develop new oil, and we have to protect this sacred, pipeline. It's the only way the oil gets to market. And so, so I really try to instill in people the importance of it, the importance of their job, and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect that pipeline and get, so it continues. Alyeska has a new term now, which is TAPS 100. So we celebrate our 50th anniversary in 2 years, 50 years of operation. And our vision is really TAPS 100. We want to be around another 50 years. So we want to protect that asset and keep it, keep the integrity of it and the reliability of it for another 50 years. Boy, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things that, that I did over the years. But I think the one thing that I'm most proud of is what we did for the culture of the company. The time I spent in employee concerns, we were really focused on the culture. And I'm certified in compliance and ethics. All right, so the ethics is a big part, and a big part of when things go wrong in the organization, you have to rebuild trust. So we had somebody in our group that was teaching speed of trust, and I was doing crucial conversations training, and getting the trust of the employees, the trust management, to get the management to listen to employees when they saw things that concerned them or they didn't think was quite right. I'm proud of what we did through those years to to make the company, make the company culture better. Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we have to maintain the integrity of this transportation method to get the oil to market. I mean, we're not going to put tractor trailers on the road. We're not going to build a railroad. And it's, maybe in a couple of decades they can ship tankers to Prudhoe. I don't know, it's possible. But right now, no, that the oil is the only route. And you have people that are, working hard to find more oil up north, and they're finding it, and it's coming soon, and we have to stay ready to receive it, and they have to feel comfortable that they can rely on our pipeline to be there to transport their oil. Otherwise, the economics of their project, I mean, are at risk. So that's an important thing for people that are working and operating the pipeline need to keep in mind. We can't shortcut things. We can't accept excessive risk, right? We need to have a risk tolerance that's appropriate. That we're not putting the infrastructure at risk unnecessarily when we can mitigate it. So I think that's really, really important. Well, there are a couple of major improvements. I think I mentioned earlier about the drag reducing agent. You think, well, that's nice. They inject the stuff and you get more throughput. But there's a huge financial impact to that. All right. The original design had us putting in pump stations at pump 11, having us put pumps in at pump station 5. Additional pumps at some of the pump stations in order to get 2,000 barrels or 2 million barrels a day. So we were limited on mechanical capacity. Well, that's a lot of capital investment that wasn't necessary. And you figure when you have capital investment, you're amortizing that over a long period of time. So you're putting the money up front and you're not getting it back for a longer period of time. So looking at time value of money, it was much better to use DRA product as needed for the short term to support that peak of throughput. Because when you look at that peak didn't last that long. It started coming down in a matter of like 5 years. Well, you're better off paying operating costs that come through the tariff that people shipping oil pay for than tying it up, not getting it back through the tariff. Through sort of a capital amortization in the tariff. So economically, it was smart. And then you don't have facilities to tear out. I mean, right now we're going through removal of some of the facilities we no longer need, so we forgo that because we never had to build it. And so there were that was really an innovative solution to getting our peak throughput and reaching our peak throughput. So I think that was one thing that I thought was something. The other is that in the early 2000s, the original design of our pump stations used jet engines. Huge. I mean, you think of the jet engine off an aircraft, right? This huge jet engine. And it's turning this kind of a propeller, if you imagine sort of like a little gerbil, whatever. But in this case, really high speed. And so it's a reaction turbine. There's no mechanical connection between the jet engine and it's just blowing, the energy of the force of the engine turning really high speed turbine. That runs the pump. Well, very expensive, first of all. Up north we have natural gas, but on the other stations we're burning diesel fuel to run those things, and it's very expensive to operate. And it's kind of messy, and So, in the early 2000s, they came up with they wanted to renew their facilities. Facilities were getting older. It was time. For instance, the the Rolls-Royce jet engines that we had, they weren't making them anymore. We were scavenging the world, finding spare parts to keep those things up and running and maintained. And we really didn't have much of a spare inventory. It's like, we need to do something different. And so the engineers kind of were thinking about what they could do, and they came up with a completely different design, which was electrical motors. The nice thing about an electrical motor is it's variable. It's not like you turn it on and it just blows and, whatever. It's much more efficient. It's easy to have variable speed on an electric motor. And so what we did was we invested in generating power or obtaining power where we are on the utility grid with backup power, and using that to run electric motors, much safer, much more efficient, much more variable. So, as throughput goes up or down, it's much easier to adjust to that. And so the new design of our facilities was a big improvement. The other is, I mentioned the pump station 2 and the contingency unit, having it in a separate module. Well, each of these new pumps, these electric motor-driven kind of pump units, are in separate modules. And worst case scenario, if we were to lose one, you would only lose one module. You'd still have others that you could keep the oil going. So it's a much, it's a much safer design to operate, much more efficient design, and much easier to adapt to changing conditions. If throughput goes down, we can very quickly adjust, efficiently adjust. So I think those were two huge things on the pipeline. I can't speak much for the industry itself. I mean, there's a lot, and the other experts could talk about, all of the new drilling techniques and all the fun stuff and the optimization and of getting oil out of those wells using the water and the gas cap, and getting really squeezing every bit of oil you can out of those fields. They've done an amazing job up north. Pipeline was only supposed to last like 20 years. And here we are 50. I mean, they're doing a great job up there on the North Slope. And we just need to, like I said, continue to do our job in moving the oil safely and reliably. It's a product, I guess, that was used in the Navy originally to help naval ships go a little quicker. So that's kind of where it started. But it's a product that basically you can stretch, and the molecules they just get smaller and smaller, but they continue to be connected all the way down to almost like a single molecule level. And when it does that, when you inject it in the crude, it basically, this string effect in the crude eliminates the turbulence of the crude. It allows it to flow more, kind of laterally through the pipe without as much resistance or slowdown because of turbulence and all that. From a hydraulic standpoint, it just smooths out the flow. The bad thing is that it's only as good from where you injected it to the next pump, because then it gets all chewed up and chopped up. And the other downside was that then it also went to the refinery, and they had to, they had to have ways to deal with that product we put in the line. But I'm not an engineer or a scientist, so I can't explain it to you. But I've touched it, I've seen it. It's all about how it doesn't break. It stretches out in the flow, and it causes the oil to just calm down and flow smoothly. It's an amazing product. And it was a great technology to leverage when we needed it, and like I said, saved a lot of capital investment that we didn't need to have and then later remove. Because the last stuff we had would be like the first stuff you take out, so right? So that it didn't make good economic sense. So, but DRA was quite an innovation, and if you want to know more, Werner Monk would be the person to have explain that. Oh man, it's a first of all, the oil industry has the best opportunities, I think, in this state, and will continue to have the best opportunities for employment. There's no oil going away. A lot of the skills that you need to come to work in the oil industry will work in the gas industry, and hopefully we have a gas pipeline sometime soon. It's a great place to work. The compensation's good. You work with a lot of really smart people. I mean, I was fortunate to work with a lot of smart people, because I mean, if they hadn't been around to sponge knowledge off of, I would have been, in sad shape. But I was fortunate to work around a lot of really smart people, and were smart mentors, to me, to observe and to kind of, mimic or there's a lot of people to model after, and I think the oil industry is full of people like that. So I mean, if you really want to work something, and then it's meaningful. If you're in Alaska, why not be involved in the most important industry in the state to help preserve that pipeline, to help keep the resources coming and coming safely? Because I think still 85%, I think, of the state funding comes from, right now, oil. Well, if we get gas, maybe it's more than 85. But long term, we need to keep that cash coming. We have a permanent fund, and it continues to grow. Let it continue to grow, and it'll be there. As long as we don't over tap it, it'll be there for the future when the revenue runs out from the oil and gas. But if we say that's another 50, 60, whatever years, that's a long time. And most people could start a career in the oil and gas industry, and they probably aren't going to be as lucky as me to stay 50 years. So you can get a good career out of the oil industry and be challenged, because there's so much to learn, so much, and then so much pride in what it delivers. I'm personally very proud to have worked on the Alyeska Pipeline during construction, and to be brought on to the operating company when we started up, and to have survived 50 years in one company, be able to raise kids. I've got 4 kids. I've got 6 grandkids. I've got 4 great-grandkids. I've been blessed. I've been truly blessed with Alyeska, and the stability that gave me. It allowed me time to really be involved in my kids' activities. Alyeska's got a great culture for supporting the community. There are all kinds of things you could do, but for me I loved coaching kids. I loved coaching baseball primarily. My youngest boy is a professional baseball player. He was drafted by the Cincinnati Reds. He's in their farm system. He's a pitcher, doing great. Kid from Alaska, right? My daughter was a great baseball player. When she was 13, she quit playing baseball and played softball because the softball girls wanted her to play with them. First year she ever played softball, she was on the team that won the Little League World Series, Nunaka Valley Little League, 2012. But the time I spend with my kids and their friends, coaching youth sports, and Alyeska provided me the ability to do that without panicking and having to look for more work or working 2 jobs or 3 jobs. No, I could work my job, and I could do all that with my family. I was so blessed, and I'm so grateful for Alyeska and what it's provided me.